All right. 2 days till pitchers and catchers report for this Toronto Blue Jays team. What is this team's lineup going to look like, and who's going to fill that DH role for this squad?
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Download the app and head to FanDuel.com to get started. As always, I'm Braden Iwasco. He's Carter First. You can find us on Twitter, Braden5Iwasco. Carter First, too, as well on Instagram and TikTok. We'll be posting a lot more reels and shorts and everything of the sorts. So make sure you guys do go follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok as well. If you're new here to YouTube or you're listening anywhere else, make sure you do hit the subscribe button. We notice a lot of you guys that are watching this podcast consistently aren't subscribed. Helps us out. It's free to do so. You get your live streams, your shorts, your videos, your podcasts, everything in between for all your big Blue Jays information. And yeah, we're getting close to pitchers and catchers reporting, spring training, all of it. So it's going to be a lot of Blue Jays information. Thank goodness we are back to 5 days a week to cover it all for you guys. And it's just going to be fun. I'm ready to get into the season as well. Discord link is down in the description. Make sure you guys go and follow us or join the Discord so you can chat Blue Jays with us whenever you want to. Carter, a lot to get into today. This DH conversation all starts, I think, to the point that we didn't necessarily get everybody we wanted this offseason. We didn't fill every need for this team. They filled a lot of them. They really did fill a lot of them. I was quite happy with the offseason so far. Again, there could be more moves, but who knows? So I'm very happy with everything this team has done so far. But in saying that, the DH option right now, who are they? Who are the options for this team? What is a daily lineup going to look like? So RotoChamp has put out their projected lineups for this year's 2025 Toronto Blue Jays. So I'll read that off. Give me your thoughts on the lineup before we really dive into the in-house DH options, before we head over to, is there still somebody that the Toronto Blue Jays can get from outside of the organization? This is the projected lineup, projected home runs, projected averages for these players. They have George Springer still leading off at number one, hitting 20 home runs, 65 RBIs with a 244 average. Vladdy Jr. hitting 2 with 32 home runs, 101 RBI, and a 299 average. Anthony Santander at 3, 33 home runs, 95 RBIs, 241 average. Bichette, 17 home runs, 73 RBI, 277 average. Will Wagner, 255 average, hitting number 5 with 5 home runs, 31 RBIs. Alejandro Kirk, 10 home runs, 46 RBI, 265 average. Andrus Jimenez, 12 home runs, 60 RBI, 256 average. Ernie Clement, 7 home runs, 36 RBI, 265 average. And finally, in the number 9 hole, Nathan Lucas, 2 home runs, 10 RBI with a 265 average with only 98 at-bats. So in this scenario, Will Wagner is the DH for this team at hitting number 5. First thoughts on Will Wagner, I think he's the guy that everybody, everyone's minds go to, because he did have a good showing at the end of last year. Now, can he carry that over? Again, a prospect I'm really high on. I know you're fairly high on, and the Blue Jays organization seems very high on. How does this lineup stand out to you, and what do you think maybe could be changed here, especially when you're considering the DH role?
Yeah, when we look at the DH on the Toronto Blue Jays, it's not going to be that traditional power hitter. It's not going to be that guy that has the upside of slugging 35 home runs, unless they make Santander that full-time DH, but it doesn't really seem like that is the direction the Jays are going. Looks like they want him in the corner outfield. When you look at the underlying stats, not very good as an outfielder, but when you ask multiple Orioles fans, they say that the eye test is a little bit better than the stats on paper, so that is a little bit of a nice thing to hear about Anthony Santander. But it's going to be Will Wagner. It's going to be a young player, most likely, that is going to be in this DH spot the majority of the time. I think a lot of this is going to play out in spring training as well. It depends how if Will Wagner can continue that success he had at the end of 2024. If that goes into spring training, that spot is right now his to lose, honestly, with how high we've seen that this organization talks about Will Wagner, what he did in that small sample size of the Blue Jays in 2024. So I would lean towards it being Will Wagner right now if it's going to be an in-house signing or an in-house DH. There is still options, obviously, with it not being spring training yet. There's still, obviously, can be signings during spring training. We've seen a lot of these players like the Blake Snells, the JD Martinez's, a bunch of players throughout these last couple of seasons that don't necessarily sign right at the start of spring training. They'll sign it sometime in the middle of spring training. So it's not necessarily out of the window that they could go out and get someone outside of the organization. But if you're looking within the organization right now, it's going to be Will Wagner as my number one guy. I'm a big Orelvis Martinez guy. I think there's multiple people that watch Toronto Blue Jays that are very high on him. A lot of people haven't really seen enough, especially when you play, one game last season and have that PED suspension, not necessarily going to bode well for Orelvis Martinez. But my main three for this position is I'm leaning towards Will Wagner. Orelvis Martinez is probably going to be in there. And then if they do make an additional signing, if they are not done going to do an outside option, I can see Anthony Santander taking some reps at that DH position as well.
Yeah, and that's the big question, right? And I know me and you've had these conversations for the fact that Anthony Santander will not play every game in the field. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. will not play every game at first base. You're probably looking at those two guys taking some DH reps, maybe a George Springer taking some DH reps. So you have options, maybe Alejandro Kirk, maybe to give him some break behind the dish. Probably, I would assume they would just give him the day off, but it's an option for him to DH as well. So it's not like this DH position for this team is going to be one guy all the time. He's not going to be Shohei Ohtani DHing constantly. He's going to there's going to be some movement here. The problem that brings with us is that if you want Anthony Santander a day off just to DH, don't worry about the field. Well, now who's playing in the field? With an injury to Daulton Varsho to start the season, you're probably looking at a guy like Nathan Lucas to man one of those fielding positions. Then who's your second option? Probably would be most likely a Davis Schneider or an Addison Barger, depending on how the spring training goes and where those guys can slot in if they do start with the major league club. So that's just talking about the Anthony Santander of it all. Again, if Vlad doesn't play every single game at 1, he might play a couple games at 3. He might play a couple games at DH. So this lineup is going to move and shift around quite often. So Orelvis and Will Wagner, those are like your two guys that you're seeing getting the majority of the DH time?
Again, it depends how spring training goes. There's a lot that can switch depending on who makes the team. Because there's a few obviously that are going to be on the Toronto Blue Jays, whether you like it or not. Like Vladdy is obviously going to be on the Toronto Blue Jays. George Springer, you go down the list. Bichette, Santander, Alejandro Kirk, Andrus Jimenez. Ernie Clement will definitely make the team. Will he be an everyday starter? That is up for debate, I would say. But then you have the DH position. I think Will Wagner is for sure going to be on this baseball team. I don't know if he'll be the full-time DH for every single game, but right now that's where we'd be probably leaning towards. Then you have the center field spot at the start of the season. It's either Joey Loperfido or Nathan Lucas. If you're going to go with a more proven option, that would be Nathan Lucas. From what we've seen last season, Joey Loperfido struggled a little bit. Nathan Lucas, being a 30-year-old that has a little bit more major league experience than Joey Loperfido, they might lean that way. But then you have other guys that, again, might prove it and have the ability to maybe DH in some of these spots. Or maybe, again, like you said, maybe Vladdy doesn't want to be fielding every single game. You move one of these guys to first base and Vladdy's your DH. Same thing with Anthony Santander. Maybe you give George Springer the day off here and there, keep him healthy, give him the DH spot as well. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's like, for example, I don't know, like an Addison Barger or a Jonathan Clase, like they are going to be a DH. I think what would probably happen is they're going to try to maximize their defensive output. If they can have if they have an opportunity to get Anthony Santander out of the field for a younger guy like Jonathan Clase, even Nathan Lucas plays better defense than him, obviously Joey Loperfido, they're going to try to maximize their defense. So it kind of depends on who's hot at the right times, how good some players are defensively, and if they do obviously go out and make any more moves. So I don't think it's going to be that traditional, this guy is the DH every single game. I think it is going to be a little bit of a flexible position. There is going to be a lot of changes with the DH. Is that something that I love seeing as a Toronto Blue Jays fan? I'd rather have that power hitter that you couldn't just have the no-brainer slot in that DH. But this does give them some flexibility within the lineup and also like just who's playing good baseball at that time.
Yeah, I'm a little bit unsure of what's going to happen here. I will want to see how it starts off the season, because odds are you're looking at a more full-time guy being that DH for probably the first 10-ish games of the year before there start to become changes. And there always is. There always will be. Spring training can't tell you everything. When guys start playing regular games in the regular season, things will change. So, yeah, I'm leaning towards Will Wagner being that guy as of right now for that DH spot. But you're right. There are guys like Orelvis Martinez, Joey Loperfido, Nathan Lucas, I guess not in so much in the DH role. He will be a fielder. Davis Schneider, who could possibly slide in again. Still unsure of where Davis Schneider fits into all of this. Again, another guy that the team seems to want to keep going. What can he bring? That's going to be a storyline for me going in as a Davis Schneider fan, as rough of a season he has had in the last year. A guy that I'll be looking into sort of big time for spring training. Probably one of four guys you really look at in spring training. Orelvis Martinez, Will Wagner, Davis Schneider, and probably Joey Loperfido. I think Nathan Lucas right now has a little bit more of that, the proven track record. So I think that right now that center field position might be his. Again, we might see George Springer slide over into center for a few games as well. And with this Daulton Varsho injury, it is giving a ton of flexibility to this lineup. I think we could end up seeing in the first 30 games of this year a very different lineup positionally, almost, a few times a week. So that's something I'll really be looking into, Carter.
Well, if we look at Ross Atkins, he loves defense. So I feel like every single opportunity he's going to get, he's going to try to maximize that defensive output. So if you're talking about defense, you're talking about a lot of the players on this team right now, like Joey Loperfido. If you're looking at outfield specifically, because you look at the infield, you have pretty much your guys. Like Ernie Clement is going to be your best defensive third baseman. Bichette, you're not going to take Bichette away from the shortstop position. You didn't trade for Andrus Jimenez for no reason, so he's going to be your second baseman. And then Vladimir most of the time will be your first baseman. We have heard a little bit of rumors. I'm not sure if this is going to end up being true. I don't necessarily think it is, but Anthony Santander moving to that first base position as well. Again, just to kind of have another flexible option, because you don't really have a backup first baseman right now after that Spencer Horwitz trade. But if you're looking at, again, maximizing that defensive output, would you rather have Davis Schneider in the outfield? Would you rather have Joey Loperfido in the outfield, Nathan Lucas compared to a guy like Anthony Santander? So what we could see is Anthony Santander moving to that DH spot and then having, again, sort of this flexible role of a left or right fielder that you kind of rotate your Davis Schneiders or Joey Loperfidos, maybe your Jonathan Clases. Again, depends what we see in spring training, not as high on a guy like that. But maybe if you see some stuff from Joey Loperfido, like that outfield is fairly open right now. Whereas you go to the infield, maybe Ernie Clement doesn't play here and there. Maybe he can DH, but you want Ernie Clement to be that DH? Probably not. Who's going to play third base at that time? Would you want to have Barger out there? Would you want to have Orelvis Martinez? Defensively, not even close to a guy like Ernie Clement. So it's all going to come down to, again, who's just playing good baseball at the right times. We saw last season, especially with these younger players, when Davis Schneider was having good at-bats, didn't really see him on the field as much as we like to. You go down the line, Will Wagner, at the end of the season, was getting the at-bats because there was so much playing time. But what I would like to see is just ride the hot hand more. I thought John Schneider kind of got away from that a lot of the times, especially with you have a flexible lineup. You have some guys that can kind of play wherever. You have a lot of these Swiss Army knives, these utility players. I want John Schneider to see who's playing well. Just literally use his eyes. If you can see that Davis Schneider's having very good at-bats, you can see that Will Wagner's having good at-bats, or Orelvis Martinez, whoever it ends up being, play them, especially early on in the season if you're going to have these young guys on your starting and opening day roster.
Yeah, and we talked about this as well, Carter, just to piggyback off of the Will Wagner comment with sort of riding the hot hand. I don't think Will Wagner will get the number one spot over George Springer for number one in the lineup, but I could see them definitely working him into that role. And if you're using your DH as that, I'm tend to be more okay with that than just having him hit, a guy with not a ton of service time within the MLB hitting your number 5 role and as not really a power bat, more so as a get on base type of guy. And that's what Will Wagner is. So I think my goal in my head, if I'm Will Wagner, is to eventually get to that leadoff position sometime this year and solidify yourself in that kind of DH role instead of that power hitter. And I think that could work well in this organization, this team in 2025.
I think we're going to have to see a young player make that big step. We saw Spencer Horwitz do it last season. A lot of people were high on him at the beginning of the season. I don't think a lot of people had the expectation for what we got out of Spencer Horwitz in 2024. If you get that massive step from Will Wagner or Elvis Martinez, again, there's a lot of options, as in Barger. You can go down the line, Jonathan Clase, all of these guys will have at least the ability to compete for an opening day roster spot. If you get a big step from one of these guys, Will Wagner can put a little bit of pressure on a guy like George Springer. If he's going to hit like he did last season, Will Wagner, if he has a good start to the season, just throw him in there. It's a little bit of a plug and play scenario. You put a little bit of pressure on some of these veteran guys to actually produce if you get one of these younger guys to have some success throughout this lineup. And it's also a lot easier to talk about some of your younger guys, maybe the prospect pool not being as bad, a little bit more of a future in the Toronto Blue Jays line if you get a massive step from one of these younger players.
Yeah, you have to. You have to hope for that every season. That doesn't matter if you're the Dodgers or the Blue Jays or the Athletics. You always want those young prospects to take that next step and be a sort of a light in the organization for the future. So 100% I agree. I think every organization's looking for that. And I think it is a massive component to which baseball team succeeds and which don't, is which of their young guys can step up and be a difference maker. So we'll have to see who will that be. And I think spring training, like you said, will be the time to look for that. So, Carter, let's take a quick break here. We'll come back. We got to talk about some options outside of the organization that the Toronto Blue Jays can bring in. I know you got a few that you want to throw at me. And then we do have a third segment today, a little bit of a fun one. So stick around if you want to just have some fun, sort of relive some of what happened on the weekend. We'll be right back. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live game bets into a same-game parlay. I've always said I'm a same-game parlay guy. I love riding those, and they sometimes give you a boost. They give you bonuses. You might as well go after those because, I mean, that's where the money's made. But again, don't take my advice because I tend to also lose bets as well. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So, Carter, we've discussed sort of the in-house options with the Toronto Blue Jays. Who is going to take that next step? Obviously, we have our thoughts. We have guys that we'll be watching in spring training to take over that DH role. Some guys that can fill in for Anthony Santander, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., let them be a DH here and there as well. A lot of movement in this lineup is what we're hearing. But, Carter, you have some outside of the organization options for DH that the Blue Jays can still target. Who would that be for you?
So yeah, when you look at the Toronto Blue Jays lineup right now, obviously you have like your four big players. You got your George Springer, your Bichettes, your Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Anthony Santander. Right now, that fifth spot is looking like it might be Will Wagner, but again, not a very established hitter. After you look at those top four, you can argue that George Springer and Bichette weren't established hitters in 2024. They had very down years. Obviously, we're expecting better seasons from both of those players. So we're going to focus on the younger guys, the guys that you're not exactly the most high on. You don't think they're going to be these big power hitters. So there still is a little bit of a spot in this lineup. And that's why you're going to see a lot of people saying, Toronto, we just need another power bat. We've seen that throughout this whole offseason. We've seen that with the links to Pete Alonso. So a lot of people still think this team needs another established bat in this lineup. Again, would not hurt whatsoever. If you get a guy that can be an above league average hitter, that is going to benefit this Toronto Blue Jays team a whole lot. And with this glaring DH spot kind of wide open right now, still have a guy that you could plug and play into there. If you really liked one of these guys that are still available on the market, the Blue Jays still have the opportunity to do that. So this is one guy that we talked about a lot in the 2023 offseason, and that is JD Martinez, a proven vet. The first thing that people might say is, how old is this guy? We've kind of seen this veteran deal go on. How's it worked so well for the Toronto Blue Jays? I think people are a lot harsher on Justin Turner than they should have been. Justin Turner was one of the best, again, not a great free agent class necessarily, but he was one of the best free agents that were signed in that offseason. I believe he had the best WRC plus out of any free agent that was signed that year. So would this be another signing like that? Possibly. Like, he's not, again, JD Martinez, if you make this signing, he's going to be your DH. He is not going to play any single infield position. He's not going to play the outfield. He is just going to be there to hit. And when you look at this guy's baseball savant, it is a sea of red, and that's exactly what you want to see when you're looking at a guy savant. So with looking at JD Martinez's baseball savant, he is in the 94th percentile in barrel percentage. That is 14.9%. In hard hit percentage, he is the 77th percentile, which is 46.1%. Launch angle sweet spots 92nd%. The bat speed 68%. The expected batting average 64. Weighted on base is 86. The only issue with JD Martinez is this guy does strike out a whole lot. A 13th percentile with which is 28.5%. Strikeout weight, the whiff rate not great either, 31.5%. So this would be a veteran hitter that you could add to your lineup, a more established hitter. It would take away a lot of the question marks. I think you kind of know what you're going to get in a JD Martinez season. But how would you feel if the Toronto Blue Jays were looking to add JD Martinez to this lineup?
Yeah, I think now, again, you got your big offseason signing. You got your Anthony Santander, which is, again, I don't want to take credit for, but it was a guy I talked about before the season even ended. So just throwing that one out there. No, JD Martinez as an additional piece to me is fine. I think that's an okay signing. You're right. The strikeout totals are not good. His batting average last season was not good. He didn't hit as many home runs as you probably were expecting from JD Martinez. I believe it was 16 home runs from JD Martinez. And again, probably not what you're looking for out of him. But at the end of the day, you've seen what this guy can do in the past. And again, I mean, you've had conversations like this saying you can't judge a guy based off of one season. You have to judge him based on his entire career. And JD Martinez is that type of guy, and that sort of fits that role perfectly. I don't know that the Blue Jays go for him. I just think it's something with JD Martinez and the Blue Jays just don't click in my head right away. But I think it's not a bad option. If you're looking at it on paper, I think he's a guy that fits this role pretty well.
Yeah, on paper, it makes a lot of sense. This team needs a DH. They need another power hitter, as a lot of people will say. JD Martinez does fit that book and title pretty well. Another guy that I wanted to go into is Mark Canha, a guy that is a little bit different than a guy like JD Martinez, because you do get a little bit of a better eye in the strikeout rate's not necessarily there at all. It's a good thing he's not striking out nearly as much as a guy like JD Martinez, but the upside you might be a little bit more limited on. But looking at a guy like Mark Canha, he has been above league average hitter in terms of WRC plus every year since 2017. 2017 was the last time he was under a league average hitter. Again, a guy that's not going to strike out a lot. He's going to walk at a fair amount. Again, it's you're going to make a signing though, and if you think he's going to be better than Will Wagner, if he can be better than Orelvis Martinez, maybe you do go to this route. But looking at the stats from last season, over two teams had a 242 average, a 344 on base, a 346 slugging. Again, WRC plus of 102. And just looking at this guy's savant, the overlying numbers, there's a few blue ones here. Unfortunately, when you look at him, the hard hit percentage not there at 34. The 34th percentile, 37.4%. The barrel percentage is 3.3. That's not exactly what you want to see either. But again, doesn't strike out a ton, walks at a good rate, doesn't chase, doesn't whiff. So kind of the exact opposite profile as you have from a guy like JD Martinez.
Yeah, and I know this is sort of contradictory to what I said a little bit with JD Martinez, is if I'm going to pick one guy to fit this role well, it's JD Martinez. I think Mark Canha's fine, but I feel like you might get very similar production out of a combination of David Schneider, Will Wagner, Orelvis Martinez, Joey Loperfido in this role than you would with Mark Canha. I think, again, Will Wagner could be that guy, and do you take upside or do you take, I hate to say it, but mediocrity? I don't know. I think Will Wagner could slot in here. And again, a guy that you could possibly put as your number one hitter eventually in this season. I think that's where you go when you give him this opportunity instead of signing again, mid guy that, could come in. He hit 7 home runs last year. That's not what I want out of this position. If I want that out of this position, I'll get a high on base average guy that is going to smack the ball around the field in Will Wagner. So again, who knows what Will Wagner is going to bring to this team and bring to the table this season. But I would almost at that point just gamble with Will Wagner or Orelvis Martinez and ride the hot hand, as like you said, than necessarily go the Mark Canha route. I do, though. I think JD Martinez fits this mold a lot better.
See, like one thing you could go with Mark Canha is that this guy does hit lefties well. If you wanted to platoon some of this DH spot, maybe you do go out and get a guy like Mark Canha who does hit lefties well, and then you get somebody from within the organization that can hopefully hit righties well. Whether that's again, sure, you have a bunch of lineup flexibility, and you're going to face righties a lot more often. That would be one problem with Mark Canha, is that is it worth the signing to just have him go hit left-handed batters? If you're going to go make that signing, JD Martinez might fit the profile a little bit better. And the last guy I want to talk about, this guy I'm not very high on, but was rumored to be linked to the Toronto Blue Jays earlier on in this offseason, and it was Brandon Drury. He had a horrible year last year. So again, if you want the instant impact guy, I don't know if that is Brandon Drury. Had very good years in 2022 and 2023. Again, above league average hitter. When you're coming off a year with an under 500 OPS, that's not really going to intrigue too many teams, but this could be a little bit more of an underrated guy. If you're expecting a bounce back from a guy like Brandon Drury, does have that traditional power profile. Obviously didn't really see it last season, but that could be another option for this Toronto Blue Jays roster.
Yeah, I don't mind that. Again, yeah, you're right. Terrible year last year. But overall, again, I'm sort of in the same mindset where I think for one position, if you're going to have a little bit of a test some guys out, I think every team has one position like that they're like, oh, we have a few options here. I still think an in-house option might be better or more beneficial to this team and be able to ride the hot hand. Again, if you bring in some of these guys, they sort of expect to be played. And if they end up playing bad, then you're limiting your organization. Right now you have, again, I'm going to keep saying their names: Will Wagner, Orelvis Martinez, Davis Schneider, Joey Loperfido. Who knows what happens with Addison Barger? All these guys that could have good years slot in, and you're sort of pigeonholing yourself. Whereas if you don't make a signing here and you roll with this, unless it's an Alex Bregman that's going to change the team and hit like Alex Bregman does, if it's not that type of signing, I've talked myself into being okay with what we have right now.
Yeah, and you got to hope that you get a good season from like just one of the following players, whether that is the Will Wagner, the Addison Barger, the David Schneider. If one of those guys can be serviceable, maybe you don't go out and make this DH move. But if you want stability, if you don't really want to take any risks that we've seen kind of Ross Atkins go in and on this all-in approach from a guy like Mark Canha, even Brendan Drury, if you're higher on that guy, again, coming off a bad season, maybe be one of those buy low candidates that you could get with minor league minor league contract with an invite to spring training. So there are some options there. I don't know if Toronto Blue Jays want to go out and make another bigger signing in that JD Martinez. Again, hits lefties well, didn't really hit righties that well last season. So it depends how confident they are in some of these younger players. That's all kind of going to be what it stems from. Does Ross Atkins really want to go all in, make sure there's another veteran presence and re-bolster this lineup? Or is he okay with rolling out one of these younger guys, having some this guy, if it's, again, Will Wagner, whoever it is, have that a little bit of a better spring training and kind of put it all together to become a regular in this Toronto Blue Jays lineup.
Yeah, and again, I think we've said our piece. We know where sort of me and yourself stands going into this year, and again, it's a lot of wait and see right now, right? Wait for spring training, see who does well, and then if you want to bring in a guy, partway through the season, and that's a hole for your team, and you think you can still be competitive, that's maybe when you go and make a smaller tier trade for a guy that could fit that mold. Let us know what you guys think down in the comments below. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Just a little bit to talk about, Carter, just on sort of everything that happened over the weekend, Super Bowl. Had time to digest. I want to let you guys in on my betting. Also on what is happening around fantasy baseball this year. I got a little extra for you guys. So stay tuned right after this quick break. So, Carter, terrible Super Bowl. Let's put it out there. We had to talk about it at some point. We sort of wanted to leave it a day of rest. Terrible Super Bowl. The game sucked. Halftime show was, I think, fine. I saw a lot of people online hating it or loving it. Whatever. For me, it's Kendrick. I like Kendrick. Didn't love the show itself, but I thought it was fine. How about you, man?
It depends how you're looking at the Super Bowl. Like, the Chiefs absolutely got blown out. That was no secret if you watch the game. In that sense, I love seeing that, especially seeing Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, the whole 9 yards, and not going on that three-peat. I said on my ads last weekend that I was hedging my bets. So unfortunately, I didn't win a lot of money, but I did see the demise of the Kansas City Chiefs. And you could see up front that the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line had no option or no answer for guys like Jalen Carter, Brandon Graham. Obviously, there's so many good players on that defensive line. They could rotate in pretty much whoever, and they were doing numbers on the Chiefs offensive line, especially guys like Jawan Taylor just got eaten up alive the entire game. But if you're looking at the traditional, you want a competitive Super Bowl, that's not really what you got. I think at one time it was 34-0 for the Eagles. I mean 32-0, but it doesn't matter when you're down 30 points in the Super Bowl. Not exactly what you want to see if you're looking for a close game.
No, not at all. And again, I wasn't sure. I didn't want the Eagles to win because I'm a Vikings fan. I didn't want the Chiefs to win because I don't like the Chiefs. So it was sort of a lose-lose for me either way. I ended up coming even on my bets. With the amount of bets I placed, to come out even was a win after sort of a game that there wasn't that back and forth, that two offensive teams or two defensive teams. It was sort of just the Eagles killing them. So I'm okay with how that went for my bets. Carter, just a quick update. Fantasy baseball. I know a bunch of people are going to do drafts, going to do leagues, stuff like that. I will save some time in third segments of the show to talk about teeing up a little bit of fantasy baseball. Me and Carter in a big league this year. We can keep you guys up to date on some fantasy stuff. If we find some good pickups on the wire, we'll let you guys know on here as well. Anything like that, how it's going to go throughout the season. We'll do maybe a little third segment fantasy thing once in a while. If that interests you as well, let us know if you guys are in any fantasy baseball leagues. And if you got a cool rule set for fantasy baseball, we always struggle with finding a really good balanced rule set, point system, everything like that. So if you guys got a good one, let us know in the comments. And maybe, who knows, maybe we'll run a locked on one with everybody as well. If you guys would be interested in doing a fantasy baseball locked on Blue Jays podcast, watchers, everything like that, all of you guys, if you want to do that, you can. Maybe I'll put a link in one of the descriptions. First come, first serve. And we do a big draft. If that's interesting to any of you, again, leave a comment. Let us know that would be something you guys would be interested in, and we could definitely set that up for the start of the year. Carter, anything else before we sort of kick out of here for the day?
Yeah, the last thing I'm going to bring up is just the options that we kind of went over. If you had to make a decision right now, whether it's that in-house option, again, it could be Will Wagner, it could be Orelvis Martinez, it could be any single player within the Toronto Blue Jays that you're high on for that DH position, or do you have JD Martinez? Do you have a Mark Canha? Do you have a Brendan Drury? Just kind of give me a 1 to 4, like which one you would love to see the most, and then which one, obviously, at your number 4 spot being the one that you do not want to see in the Toronto Blue Jays in 2025.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Sort of a wrap up here. For me, it has to be it's the in-house option, number 1. I think that's where I'm at now, unless it's a huge signing, a guy that's really going to be impact immediately. JD Martinez. Number 2 for me, I think that the upside for JD Martinez is there still. Then I'm going Drury at number 3 and Mark Canha at number 4 personally. How about yourself?
See, I think if you have the opportunity to get a guy like JD Martinez and bolster that lineup, I think you have to go do that. I think you have to get that DH that has the opportunity to hit 20, 25 home runs. I don't necessarily see that coming from within the organization with Will Wagner. Again, a little bit of a different profile, unless Orelvis Martinez has this amazing season, which I would absolutely love to see. I think best case scenario is that you have Will Wagner or Orelvis Martinez blow everyone out of the water, and you have one of those guys become an everyday player. But I think you just have a lot more certainty with a guy like JD Martinez. My second one would be just, you have these young stars. If you really believe in these young stars, let them have the ability to play. Don't fill up that DH spot. Gives you more opportunity to get guys like Will Wagner, Addison Barger, Orelvis Martinez, any of those type of guys, Joey Loperfido's on the field. Then I actually have Mark Canha over Brendan Drury. I'm not really looking at the guy that had an under 500 OPS with any validity this season. I know he did have 26 home runs in 2023. But again, when you're talking about a team that really wants to be competitive this season, it kind of has this all-in mentality. I think that's just a really big risk on a guy like Brendan Drury, unless it is one of those, again, minor league signings and an invite to spring training, or a major league signing with a very low contract. And then, obviously, so Mark Canha number 3, and then I have Brendan Drury at number 4.
Yeah, fair enough. And again, I think it's a little bit of the situation that these guys are put into. And what this baseball team wants. I think they need Orelvis Martinez, Will Wagner in the lineup. I think you have to develop that kid and try to get him to be that number 1 in the order type of player. I think you got to get George Springer out of there. We have said this for the past 2 seasons now. You got to get George Springer out of there, and I think Will Wagner could possibly be that answer for that number 1 spot. So that's a little bit of a bias for me, because it's not as much of Will Wagner's going to do the amount of difference that we need him to. I think he's just going to be a good leadoff hitter, and that's what this team so desperately needs right now, to get George Springer the hell out of the lineup, or out of that top spot anyway.
Yeah, best case scenario is that Will Wagner has an unbelievable year. I just think that for a guy that's played under 30 games, to have him as being that full-time DH, having that massive year where he can be a number 1 hitter, it's a lot of expectation for a guy that hasn't really had a lot of MLB service time. So as much as I love Will Wagner, I would like to see them go get one more bat, one more proven guy that, again, can be above league average hitter and take some of the expectation off of these younger guys. Saying that, if the Toronto Blue Jays roll it back with this, run it back with the current roster, I'm not going to be that upset either. Just want to say thank you guys for watching. The likes, comments, everything recently has been appreciated. We have noticed with all the new people coming around that I believe it's 77% of you guys are not subscribed. So if you are coming back, tuning into all the podcasts, that we are officially back to every single weekday, so 5 days a week, then it would be appreciated if you guys drop a subscription. Helps us a lot, and obviously keeps our podcast and shorts, whatever we post, at the top of your page. But Braden, you got anything else to add, I guess, before we do head out?
No, that's everything I got for today. Again, we'll be back with more tomorrow. We're going to have this big off-season recap with Skylar Peters, Dallin Wilton. Eventually, it's coming. To get 4 guys all on a podcast together apparently is way more difficult than it seems to be. And no, shot against them too. We got stuff going on, our lives before the season. We're trying to get some stuff prepped and ready. They work, they go to school, they got everything as well. So we're trying to put that together, and it will be out for you guys. So keep an eye out for that one, as well as a lot of, I guess, an update coming tomorrow, hopefully, as sort of, I guess it would be sort of an off-season wrap up a little bit, but there's one player we'll specifically focus on on tomorrow's episode as well. Still waiting to see on what happens with that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. contract. Will or won't they be assigning? I think it is by the 18th is the deadline. So again, we will find out coming up. Thanks again, like Carter said, for all the support and for watching the podcast each and every day.